Hello, this is Drust. In this video, I'm going to cover how to use the new panel loop feature inside of ZBrush 4R5 in a practical manner to create an open work pendant. So here we have two images of two pendants created by a company called Hunt Country Jewelers located in Hillsborough, Virginia. Hunt Country Jewelers are an award-winning design and manufacturing goldsmith that work with 18 karat, platinum, diamonds, and hand-cut colored gems. Now, these two pieces were handcrafted by them, and they are excellent works to demonstrate the new panel loop functionality inside of ZBrush 4R5. To start off, first we're going to actually go through and model the main shapes of the objects, and then we're going to end up coming in with panel loops to generate the open framework for the pendants, and then add a quick stone in the center. So if you break down the shapes of these actual objects here, you can see we have, triangle tube basically for the actual piece up here. We have a few rings that form the connections between those, and then we have some spheres basically. So we have an outer sphere, then we have like another rim sphere, and then a sphere in the middle, and then the stone in the center. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through and just generate these base shapes, and after we have these kind of base shapes hammered out and their functionality established where we want them, we can then go through and add the panel loops using polygroups and quickly carve out this open framework design. So the first thing we want to do inside of ZBrush is get a polysphere to start modeling with. So I'm going to hit comma, which will open up Lightbox here. I'm going to click on Tool, and then go over to Polysphere and double click. So now we should have the polysphere loaded inside of ZBrush. I'm going to come down to the Geometry tab and turn the subdivisions all the way down to subdivision 1 and do a delete higher. Now from here I want to split the sphere into two hemispheres basically, or just actually one hemisphere, which I'm going to use as the base for the actual pendant. So to do this quick, I'm going to hold Control and Shift and drag the green box out until it overlaps the actual equator or the horizon line of the sphere. So something like that. And when you release it, it should hide that second half of that sphere. Now if you're in perspective, you'll notice that this may not look straight, but it should be if you grab that center line when you're doing the visibility option there. So now with just half of the sphere shown, I'm going to come over to the Geometry tab, I'm going to go to Modify Topology, and I'm going to do a Delete Hidden. And what that will do, it will delete that other part of the sphere because I only want this sphere visible on my object. Now next thing I'm going to do is I want to create the different elements of the actual object. So if this is my main sphere here, I want to keep another sphere for the center part and then even another sphere for the actual gem itself. So what I'm going to do here is quickly just duplicate this tool. So I'm going to go to the Subtool tab here, and I'm just going to hit Duplicate. So now I have two of the exact same objects. I'm going to go to the one that's below it, and I'm just going to click on this eyeball icon here, which will just isolate it so it's the only thing visible on the actual screen. Now I'm going to go here to the Deformation tab, and I'm going to come to the Size option here. So I want to kind of scale this sphere here down so it isn't as round. I still want the round shape like this, but I don't really want it to bulge out this much, because if we go back to our pendant design quick, you can see that it's kind of flat. It's still spherical in this nature, but it's a squished sphere if you were looking at it from the side. So I'm going to take that, come over to size here, and I'm just going to guess and try Y here to see if that actually slims it down, and it does. And so I'm just going to toggle that one axis and then just kind of size it down until I end up getting something like this. And with that being the only axis that was active, it's not going to distort any of the other portions of the sphere, so you can see it's still round. It just literally took some of that height off the object. So that looks pretty good. And now I'm going to go back up to the rounder sphere, the original one. I'm just going to select that in my top subtool, and then I'm going to turn the eyeball icon on so I can see the second sphere that we just squished as well. So with the top one selected, I'm going to come down to the size here. I'm going to make sure all these are turned on, X, Y, and Z, and I'm just going to scale it down quite a bit. So something around 80. And so we end up with a look similar to this. Now while you're doing this, one of the new features inside of ZBrush 4R5 is a see-through option at the top. So you can see I was, clicking back and forth between Photoshop and ZBrush. But now if I come up here and do this kind of see-through option, I can kind of get a, visible view of my actual reference in the background here. So I can kind of use this to my advantage to kind of scale my object down and see if that center kind of orb fits where I want it to go. And you can just toggle this, as much as you want with the see-through option to kind of see or not see the actual object there. And you can still use your menus. So if I come over here and just scale this up a little bit, and then I can check it again, and just kind of go back and forth until that sphere roughly equals where it is on my reference. So something like that. That looks pretty good. And we'll turn down the translucency here a bit, so you can see that secondary sphere that I've scaled down is falling right about here. So that looks pretty good in reference to our design. To turn off see-through, you just come up here and set it to 0, and now you're back to your normal sculpting method inside of ZBrush. Now this bulge may be a little bit too much, again with that the size of the actual shape, so I'm just going to turn this down some as well. So I'm going to take the size again, set just the y-axis visible, and I'm just going to scale it down, which is going to do that same thing as it was doing to the original cylinder. Now with these two shapes, I'm going to want this smaller one to actually act as the stone in the end. So I want to duplicate that tool right now, so I'm going to come and make sure I have that small one selected and just do another duplication of that model. So now I should have 3 subtools visible. So if I go to solo here, you can see I have this one, which was that inner circle, a duplicate of that inner circle, and then the outer circle shape there. So now that we have this created, we now need to kind of merge these together to get us one shape out of this, so we can actually start cutting it up into the different border elements and then go in and add the actual loop patterns or the weave patterns on the inside. So to do this quick, first I'm just going to actually come through and just merge this down. So I'm going to take the sphere here that I have selected and make sure the other one is below it. I'm just going to do a merge down. I'm actually going to just turn off weld as well. And so if you hit this, you get a little error, and just hit OK. So now we have both those objects together as one tool, so it'll look like something like this. You can see it's still, they're just two interpenetrating kind of objects, and we need them one single shape, so we can go in and create some quick polygroups out of it and start applying our panel loops. So we're going to Dynamesh this really quick. So we're going to go to the Geometry tab, go to Dynamesh, set my resolution for this object, just going to keep it at 128. I'm going to turn on Polish, and I'm just going to hit Dynamesh. And so as you see, it is now Dynameshed that object, and we have basically merged those two pieces together, so we have that kind of bold shape going on and the outer circle, and it's all as one solid mesh now. So this is exactly what we want. So now we're going to go through and we're actually going to start setting some polygroups that we're going to use to kind of generate our different elements on the pendant. So we know we want this kind of outer rim as a one piece, we want this inner rim as one piece, and we want this other rim as one piece. So we're going to set those polygroups up first. So to do that quick, we're just going to come to the side here. I'm just going to hold shift to lock it into a orthographic view. And I'm just going to come through and first drag with my selection like this. And as I'm dragging, if you drag initially with just holding Control and Shift and drag, you'll just get this green box. If you hold Alt after you've dragged this out, you'll see the box will turn red. And what this is going to do, it's going to hide whatever's inside here. So I don't really want the back face of this object. So since we Dynameshed it, it kind of filled in that back. So I'm just kind of going to draw a red box across the back here and just hide that section. So now we have kind of this open shape again. And now I'm going to come through and with my green box just kind of generate a box that's about that size that will form our outer rim. Now we can check this again with our kind of see-through method to see if that rim is about where we want it to be. It looks pretty good. You can see it's about the same thickness as it is on top here, so that looks good. And with this visible like this, we need to apply a polygroup to it. Now there's two methods of doing this. First one is if you come down here to the actual polygroup tab, you can just go here and click Group Visible. With one of the new features in ZBrush is if you have something masked, and then you hit Control W, it'll apply a polygroup too. So you can end up using this kind of masking and Control W kind of effect to kind of make this a little bit faster instead of having to go down here and do this group visible polygons all the time. So I just masked and then hit Control W and I got a new polygroup out of it. So if I hold Control Shift and click off the screen now, you can see now I have this nice green kind of loop established on our actual object. So that looks pretty good. So now we're going to do the same thing with these other two looping elements that are on our little pendant here. So we need to make this its own polygroup and then make this its own polygroup. So to do that, we're just going to first isolate that red one again. So just Control Shift click on that polygroup and you'll only get the red polygroups. And then I'm actually just going to come in and drag out a green box about right here and hold the Alt button to get it turned red and release. And so you can see we just now have that front kind of portion visible. So I'm going to check with the see-through thing again just to see where that's kind of falling at on my object. So if it's in relation to that kind of bold shape there, so that's a little bit too much still. So we're going to just trim off a little bit more. So holding Control Shift, holding Alt, and then clicking. So something like that. And now with this, we're going to do that new little masking trick. So I'm just going to mask everything and then hit Control W, and it now has assigned it as a new polygroup. And then Control Shift click again to kind of see what it looks like this. So that's pretty good. We can check it again with our reference here in the see-through one more time to kind of see if that's fallen in the border there. And we'll just go through and kind of, yep, that little green polygroup looks like it's hitting right about where that other loop is, so that looks pretty good. So now we're going to do one more loop so we can actually separate the area where the orb actually, or the pendant or the jewel would be. So Control Shift click to just isolate the green, Control Shift drag, and then I'm going to hold Alt to get the red feature of it. I want this kind of border chopped off here, so something like that. Mask again, Control W, and Control Shift click just kind of see what that did. That looks pretty good. And one more, so Control Shift click that inner portion, drawing from this side now, holding Alt to get the red, and just making that visible, dragging across with a mask, Control W for a new polygroup, and then Control Shift click to just kind of have them all visible.